Thank you for joining us. I know it's not easy for a lot of you to take time out in the middle of the day. So for those joining us live, welcome. This is part 2 of our webinar series centered around caring for aging loved ones. In our first session, we focused on strategies to start conversations with an aging loved one on how to coordinate a family to create a support team. If you weren't able to join us, don't worry. It's on our YouTube page, so you can refer back to it there. We're tackling this topic of caring for an aging loved one because it impacts so many people. And we're making this available to everyone with an interest in the topic, which includes our existing clients, their friends, family, colleagues, enemies, frenemies, anyone in between. For those of you that I have not met or spoken with, my name is Chris Thomas. My firm is 40W Advisors, and I am joined today by our caregiving expert and author, Fern Pessin. Hello, Fern.
Hi, guys.
Fern, not everybody joined us during the first webinar, so let's just take a minute to let everyone know a little more about who we are. So I guess, can you kick things off and just tell us how you ended up writing 2 books on caregiving and becoming a consultant to families that are going through this?
Well, I left New York when my parents were kind of having trouble with their aging, and they realized they needed to live in one location, and they had an apartment in Florida, an apartment in New York, and I just hated snow. So I said, okay, I'll go down there. And Dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and my mom, she's a worrywart. So I said I'd go down there to support them. And over the course of 7 years, went through the entire Alzheimer's process with my dad and helped my mom, who wound up with a pseudo dementia, which means she was acting like she had dementia because of all the stress, which often happens to caregivers, spousal caregivers especially.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard that.
And I went to classes, I became a whole health aide. I mean, I did everything I could to learn what I can. And everyone kept saying, well, Fern, how do you know that stuff? How do you know that stuff? I don't know that stuff. I'm taking care of my parents. So I wrote it down. So it became a book. And then people say, okay, we need more on this. And so I write another book because I'm a writer.
And that's what, and by the way, everyone's going to receive a copy, a digital copy following this presentation of Fern's book. I'll be right there. That book contains a ton of useful information and useful checklists, many of which we'll refer to throughout the presentation today. And a couple are available as handouts. So if you go to the meeting control panel, you scroll down, you'll see handouts. You'll see a couple of those that are available for you to print. But again, those are going to be available in the digital copy as well.
Oh, and the subtitle is A Guidebook for Adults Caring for Their Aging Parents, but the content and what's in there is actually good for anyone taking care of anyone. It's just written from the perspective of a daughter. So feel free, if you know people who are taking care of a partner or a child with disabilities or something like that, it's still applicable for that.
Perfect. So thanks, Fern, for sharing your story. I'll take a minute here just to tell ours. You might be wondering why a financial firm is hosting a webinar on caregiving. To understand that, let me just tell you a little bit more about 40W Advisors. We are not just an investment manager like many of our so-called competitors. We help our clients with every aspect of their financial lives through financial and life planning. Our clients are primarily successful, busy people. They value their time. And our goal is to help them have more time for the things that they are most passionate about and that are most important to them. We also look to reduce stress so that our clients can be present in those moments. We decided to put a spotlight on this topic of caring for a loved one because we saw it firsthand. We saw the impact it was having on clients, money, time, stress, and relationships. And we've recently taken it a step farther by adding Fern to our team so that she can coach our clients that are going through this on all the non-financial elements of the caregiving experience. So we're really excited about that and making that available to clients going forward. We think what we're doing here is pretty unique in the world of financial advice. So if you want to talk more about it, we're here to you know, we're here to go into more details for you. So let's go in and let's get into what we're talking about today. First off, from an administrative standpoint, everyone joining live is in listen only mode. If you have questions, you can use the chat or questions box that's on the side panel. Sophia Walters from our team will be monitoring the questions to make sure we get to them, and she'll jump in to make sure that we answer anything either during or at the conclusion of our kind of prepared comments. As I mentioned earlier, in the last webinar, this is part 2. In our last webinar, we focused on conversations, really how to have those difficult conversations with family. Today, we're going to focus on the next step, which is working with your loved ones, which in many cases might be an aging parent, to gather and organize all of their information and documents that you will need. We're also going to talk more about assembling a team along the way that's going to help, and along the way, we're going to help provide suggestions on how to assemble a team, along with tools and resources that you can use. So let's get started. Fern, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you for a bit.
Okay. Cool. Well, the first thing I wanted to mention is about Medicaid, and people, we're not going to go into that because it's a really complicated process. But what you do need to know is that there are options. Let's say you're taking care of your parents and you have 2 parents around, one parent is sick, like in my case. My family did a whole work with an elder care lawyer to make sure that should one of my parents start going through more money than would leave money for the surviving parent, we wanted to be able to apply for Medicaid. So there are ways to do that. And if you have any questions about that, I'm happy to help you. But just know Medicaid isn't only about yourself. It could be for the people that you're caring for. Otherwise, you may wind up picking up all their bills.
Right. And to learn more about Medicaid, it is a joint federal and state program. So the rules for getting approved, they're different depending on the state that you're in. So it's a highly local topic.
Absolutely. And I put this in because this is what the lawyer said to me. He said, never happens until it does. And then I had a friend who was in her 40s who had a stroke, lost her business because she never told her family about the business. I've had people, I have a friend with a glioblastoma, unexpected. She's retired, she took care of her 2 parents, and now she's dying. You never know. You don't wake up and say, oh, I'm gonna have a stroke today, let me get everything in order. So it's kind of great to be ahead of the game, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
Perfect.
And the most important thing is when we're working, especially with parents, there's a lot of emotional issues around working with parents. So the conversation is not, believe me, I learned this the hard way. It's not, you need to go do this, we have to. It's more about how can I help you and help your parents or your spouse come to a decision on their own while they're still able. So we're going to talk a little bit about what can you plan in advance to make this transition easier.
And so after the conversation, we're going to talk about just how you get access to that information, right? So I think that's our first section here, is getting into the nitty gritty of it.
Right. How do you get that information from your parents, right? I have a friend who says, I don't want my kids to know that I'm running out of money, you know, and I have other people who have said, I don't want them to know how much I have, or I don't want them to know about the timeshare we never told them about, or I have a secret family somewhere, you know. So how do you get information when people may not want to share everything? And the things that you need to get, the things that are critical are the things on this list here. So things like government documents, the safe deposit box, you have to know if they even have one, storage facilities, which might have things they don't want you to know about, but you need to know those things are there. So you can look at the list, but basically the idea is get the passwords for them, or they know where the keys are, know where the contracts are, all of that.
Right. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of lists that you're going to see on the screen. And again, a lot of those are going to be in the book, and some of those are in the handouts that are immediately available to you on the control panel here.
Yeah, this is more important facts, figures, and items, and you're going to get this like Chris just said in the handout, so you don't have to like try and scribble and copy it all down right now. But there are things people don't think about that until they're in crisis, like telephone message retrieval. If your parents are still on answering machines, how do you get that? Or if your phone system is hooked to your cable, you might have a message retrieval system, and so on. Those kinds of things, you have to know that information in order to be able to pick up the pieces. Otherwise, they could potentially lose a house, a car, so on and so forth. So just make sure you stay on top of that.
Yeah, I think that big one, we'll talk more about it, but like the computer access. I mean, so many things now are, you can get access to all of, accounts or information just by being able to access that information online. But knowing those username and passwords, I mean, it's hard enough for a lot of us to remember our own username and passwords, let alone, maybe, someone that maybe jumped into technology a little later on in their life, and maybe, it's even harder for them. So getting that black book of passwords, and we'll talk more about some other ways you can share
Yeah,
passwords.
I wanted you to talk about this. This is a system that you have to help people so that they can get access when they need it and not necessarily before they need it.
Yeah, so I mean, again, yeah, I asked that we put this in because, as someone that frequently forgets passwords, and also someone with very short patience and a short temper, I've found these tools to be ridiculously helpful to me, both professionally and personally. And these are secure password storage solutions. And we're throwing out two of them here. There's Dashlane, LastPass. I know that, I think iCloud has one, Google has one as well, where you can securely store all of your passwords in one place. All you really need to remember is your username and login to either Dashlane, LastPass, or whatever service you're using. This can be a great thing to set up for, a parent, so that they can store all of their passwords, and you can help them store all their passwords in this one place. That way, again, everything's just organized and it's secure. Having things secure. I've never been a big fan of storing passwords on the computer, inside, just having Google automatically save my password. Well, what happens if someone hacks into my Gmail account? Well, now they're going to be able to maybe cross-reference and get into all of our passwords. We've seen it happen. We've seen it happen with clients. So it's something that I think using a service like this these are enterprise type services that businesses use, that are very, very secure. So just a suggestion on a way to gather together passwords.
Yeah, so I use something called M-Secure, and I put my parents into that because when I was cleaning out my mother and father's apartment when they moved into independent living, I found little pieces of paper everywhere, like with sticky tape on it, with passwords for everything. And I said, what happened to your black book? I made you a binder with, fill in all the information. And my mother says, oh, I can never find it when I need it.
Right.
So it's really hard. So the thing is that if you're not ready to share, and that's okay, you just have to have it all in one place, and then make sure it's secure, like Chris said. So what I did in this book that Chris just talking about is I put a place for all those things to go in there, and then you can just give the book to a lawyer, a friend, put it in a safe deposit box. As long as 2 to 3 people know about where it is and how to get it, then you just have to remember to update your passwords when you do that, which we're supposed to do it often. Not all of us do. So just keep that in mind. You don't have to share it now, but you should have it all together.
Right. And that's a way, when having the conversations, that's a way to kind of maybe take some of the pressure off, saying, look, if you're not ready to share all this stuff with me, at least get it in one place for yourself. Let us know where it is so that when, if we ever needed to, we could go access it and pick up and run with things.
Yeah, and as long as you're following these lists that we're giving everybody, you can say, look, mom, dad, whatever, these are the things that we will need in order to follow your wishes.
Yep.
So you can give them an outline of the things you need, and you could do it over time if you want, slowly, or you can do it all at once.
Yeah.
Okay, next.
So just getting into some of the documents here, we'll talk about some of the money and legal documents. So if you can gather the passwords and just first step is getting consent that they'll share the information. Second step is now getting passwords to access things online. But now we'll get into some of the specific documents on the legal front that you need to take a look at.
Yeah, so these are the ones that I found were most important, and this is across the line with all my people in my support groups. You need all of these things. You need a will and or a trust. Chris, you can talk about the TINs. You have powers of attorney, which there's durable power of attorney and a regular power of attorney, and there's difference between those. We'll get into that in a second. The medical directives are about what do you want in case blah, blah, blah happens. So it's going through all of that, etc. So these are the things that you need to, in an overall legal area, need to have.
Yeah, and just making sure that mom and dad have these things. Do they have a will? Do they have a power of attorney? Do they have a medical directive? Do they have a healthcare proxy? Because those are the basic estate planning documents that everybody needs, regardless of their net worth.
Oh, you know what, Chris? When I did this with my parents, we had everything done in New York. And when my parents moved full-time to Florida, we had to change everything to have Florida law. So everybody should just know that even if the documents exist, they have to be current for the current location. And if you're out of state, you want to just align all of that, make sure that it all works where they are.
Yes, and that's true for both, because the probate process is done at the state level. The probate process is the process by which assets get passed, upon death, assets get passed according to the will or what have you. But the powers of attorney and the medical directives are also subject to local state laws. We've worked with some clients that have moved to South Carolina, and they needed to have their powers of attorney and their medical directives updated because the local hospital networks would not have recognized them in their current form when they were drafted in Virginia.
Yeah, and in Florida, if you have a DNR, for example, or DNI, they won't accept it unless it's on yellow paper. So, I mean, you have to know these things.
Yeah, that's odd. I didn't know that. We talked before about the difference between the powers of attorney. So there's the durable power of attorney, which we kind of refer to as the financial power of attorney. And then another one's a healthcare proxy. A healthcare proxy could be healthcare agent. It could be healthcare power of attorney. Again, that just kind of depends on how the state that you live in, what your local jurisdiction, how they define it. But it's important to know that they're two different documents that grant two different powers.
Exactly.
Again, durable power of attorney is good for financials. It allows somebody, whoever that agent is, whoever's granted that power of attorney, it allows them to authorize bills to be paid. It allows them to talk to the financial service companies or to the utility companies on behalf of mom and dad. The healthcare proxy confined to healthcare decisions and working with the healthcare professionals. One of the things that I'll mention here, and we help our clients set up these documents all the time. We coach them through it. We work with, whether they do it online, they do it with attorneys or what have you. Sometimes they may have somebody in mind, let's say one of their kids, that they want to be the financial power of attorney. Maybe it's somebody that's more comfortable with financial things, and just kind of stereotyping and using, maybe old stereotypes. Maybe it's my son's going to be the power of attorney for financial decisions because he's in the banking world or what have you. Whereas maybe my daughter is the one I want to do the healthcare proxy because she's the one that, is more comfortable dealing with healthcare and the professionals. And you also want people to each have a role. You don't want someone to maybe think that they don't have a role in this at all. It's just important to know that if in case that does happen, maybe the healthcare power of attorney wants to proceed with a certain level of treatment that then requires money to be distributed to pay for that treatment. Well, if they're not in agreement on how things should proceed, that can create a little bit of conflict. So the durable power of attorney and healthcare proxy don't have to be the same person, but in some instances, it can be, it can be helpful to have them be the same person. So I don't
Yeah,
know, anything you want to add on that?
yeah, I have a friend, I think I mentioned the one with glioblastoma, and she wanted to try, and her healthcare proxy and all her friends and her cousins and whatever, they all wanted her to try an experimental treatment in Texas, and it was not covered by insurance. And the durable power of attorney said no. And so they're trying to follow my friend's wishes, and they're trying to do something to keep her alive longer, and they were blocked and could not do that. So I think it's important to have people who work together. Also, this same friend, she thought she was doing a good thing. She had 2 healthcare proxies and 2 durable power of attorneys. So 4 people were trying to make decisions.
Right.
And you know, when you have more than one person in a room, people can't can't agree. So it's been very complicated, and I fear that her care has been compromised because it's taking so long. So whoever you're picking in these roles, try to make sure they at least get along and are willing to go through all the scenarios and come to a mutual decision.
Yeah, and we spend some time here because it's important. I think letting those people know ahead of time too, or knowing if you yourself are going to be one of these and put in one of these roles, or if
Yeah.
you're somebody and you know, letting the people know ahead of time which roles they're in, it allows them time to just kind of comprehend it, understand it, and maybe have, you know, just think through it, ask questions to make sure that they're comfortable serving. So
Yeah, this woman chose 4 people and 2 of them dropped out. It was too much.
yeah,
They were like, no, I thought I'd have to take care of a broken leg, you know, not a life-ending decision, you know.
right.
So
Uh, so in a perfect world, right? Mom, dad, or whoever you are helping know exactly what they have, they know where it is, but in reality, that might not be the case. Maybe things were set up a long time ago. Maybe the spouse that handled the finances and legal things is no longer around, or maybe they're not competent. So trying to help someone locate or remember where things are, it can take up a lot of time. And as you can imagine, it can create some frustration from both sides. So we would suggest that in these cases, you consider letting a third party, maybe it's someone like Fern, intermediate a little bit. It's going to help save, it can help save time, it can help reduce stress. Again, it gets back to our slogan, more time, less stress. If you or they are not comfortable with having a third party involved, then maybe you just assign one person from the family to work with mom or dad to gradually help them over time locate everything that is needed. And maybe it's somebody that has the right temperament for it. They're a little more patient, you know, and they have the time that they can slowly work with mom or dad to go locate all of these things. So again, and I also just point out here for the third party intermediary, you know, we get brought in a lot of times to work with families because sometimes when there is a third party involved, it takes a little bit of the emotion out of everything.
yeah.
And it makes it more of a business transaction. It makes it more of, you know, hey, we need to do X, Y, and Z. Let's get this done. So again, it's perfect world. Everybody has these things already organized and they know where everything is, but in reality, that's very, you know, not usually the case. So
Yeah, I heard from my mother who said, "Why are you trying to kick me out of my house?" You know, I was just trying to get the papers together. So there's emotional stuff connected to relationships that you have to consider. So sometimes someone outside is really the right person to help guide all this. So at least it's all done and collected.
let's be honest, everyone's kind of on their best behavior when there's somebody else in the room, right? So it kind of, you know, it kind of keeps everybody on task. Talked about some of the legal documents. You know, it's hitting on the financial documents here. Again, it's important to know where all the money is. For the most part, you just need to know which institutions, which financial institutions mom or dad may have accounts with. And then, you know, with a power of attorney, which we talked about before, and or their online passwords, you can log in, you can take inventory, and you can monitor where everything is.
Well, Chris, if people have somebody like you to help them with it, then they can trust you with all this information, secure it, And then when it's time and the family needs them, couldn't they contact you if the people have said it's okay to give in case of?
Right, and it's one of the value propositions certainly a financial advisor like ourselves brings to the table is, somebody that knows where, everything is. And throughout our work with families, we've helped people aggregate and consolidate and organize their stuff along the way. So certainly, I mean, I think, obviously I'm a big fan of financial advisors. So, but some accounts, though, I think it's worth noting that some accounts may be harder to track down. For example, if you might have had a 401k or another retirement 401k or a 403b retirement plan with an old employer, maybe that never got consolidated into an IRA. And there's something from an employer they worked with 20 years ago that they kind of just forgot about, and it's still out there. Small bank accounts, I often sometimes see that maybe mom or dad ended up, some cash became available from a CD, and maybe there was a bank that was advertising a high kind of teaser interest rate. So mom or dad opened this one-off bank account to get the higher interest rate, and maybe they just kind of forgot about it over time.
You know what happened? We had a Fidelity called and said, you have this money here. And I said, no, that man died. And we sent you all the paperwork, but we sent it for 2 other Fidelity accounts, not this one. So there was $1,200 just sitting there, and it's now 2 years, almost 2 years. And we're still trying to close that account and move the money into my mother's because it had trust relationships, partner relationships. Yeah. So you never know where it's going to come up.
There's a lot of benefits to consolidating things and simplifying life, along the way. So that's definitely something that we try to help people do too. Annuities or life insurance are just something else that someone might have, that mom or dad might have bought an annuity or been sold an annuity or sold a life insurance policy years ago that maybe they forgot about. So just knowing exactly if that exists. Old stock certificates, so stocks that might have been issued in certificate form, actually like a hard copy stock certificate, or maybe it was directly issued, from the company. We've seen that where you have to go and convert those stock certificates or convert them to put them into a brokerage account. And then don't forget about cash under the mattress. You kind of want to know if there's cash under the mattress buried in the backyard or what have you. The bottom line is you're just going to need to identify what accounts are out there. The best way to do it might be just to check the mail. Check all the mail and email that comes in from time to time, because most financial institutions are required to provide some sort of regular reports. So if you're able to just say, oh, what is this thing that came in from, MetLife, an insurance company. I didn't know anything. You had an account with MetLife. Well, you see a MetLife envelope, you go through it, and then you can start to get some things on the radar that maybe weren't prior.
But you also have to have permission. Hello, power of attorney, durable power of attorney, to get that information, HIPAA for all the health information. So it's not just knowing where it is, you have to be able to access it.
Right. So just some things to think about on the financial document side. Now, so once you've been able to identify where all the financial accounts are, you're going to want to start tracking them. And same thing with the legal documents. You're going to want to store those legal documents in one place. So there's a lot of tools out there. I'm just giving you a snapshot right now. This is our 40W Advisors portal that we set up for all of our clients. You can, on this portal, you can link accounts, so you can set up a data feed for accounts. Through the vault, you can store documents. You can set it up so that you get alerts when account balances change. So the whole family could really have, if mom or dad, set up their information on here, you can help mom and dad set up their information. The entire family can have access to this. So as long as mom and dad are comfortable with it, all of the kids can have a login so that they can view this.
But what's important to say is they can have a login to see it, but not be able to manage it or do any transactions, because you might have people not wanting their family to be able to do that.
100%. This is visibility only. There's no transactions that are done on this system, so it's just for reporting. Now, I just took a minute to kind of highlight our, our tool here, but there's a number of online tools that are available to the public that can probably help you with this. One of the benefits, of doing it, whether it's us or a financial advisor that offers something like this, is that it's not public, right? So over a free tool that's available to you online through, mint.com was one of the original ones that came out with this. Nothing's free, right? So you're putting information into this system. Well, they're no doubt kind of selling your information for marketing purposes to outside people. But regardless, having something is better than nothing. So just again, being able to, once you're able to locate all the financial and all the legal documents, storing it in one place, very important. So again, said along the way, we give you some suggestions on tools and resources. That's just one of them. So covered financial and legal documents. Fern, let's get into healthcare documents here.
Yeah, the healthcare documents are really, really important to making sure your parents or your spouse has continual care that is appropriate for whatever their condition is. So you need an updated medication list basically every time you go to the doctor. So putting that into some kind of format that can be easily updated. The previous medical history, I used to take notes every time we went to the doctor so I can tell you the blood pressure, the weight, et cetera, for every visit, and look at the trends and things like that. So when we had a new doctor, I was able to provide a full medical history. Of course, all the insurance cards and plan information, which also includes things like long-term care insurance and any kind of policies that help pay for whether it's aids or hospice or services, whatever, anything like that. Donor information, are they donors? Will they accept a donation for organs or for blood and so on and so forth? You need to know all of that. You need to know their blood type. And then DNR, DNI, with COVID, people didn't have DNIs, which is a do not intubate. And, once people are on this tube inside, they can't speak, they can't communicate, and everything gets shut down. So do people want that or not? And then the rest of the healthcare directives. And the most important thing with all of this is you need to have access to it. So you can print it out, and then keep it in a go bag if your loved one has to go to a hospital or something, or rehab, so that you have it all. Or you can put it all, I have it on a flash stick, so that anywhere I go, it's on my keychain. I can just say, okay, give me access to a computer and I'll print out this list for you. So those are kind of easy ways to carry it around with you. Being a household manager or a money manager as a family is different than bringing in an outside person. So let's move into that.
Yeah, there we go. Sorry.
Yeah, so you can help your loved ones and say to them, I'm not trying to unearth your secrets or take over or do anything like that, but I want to help you. So let me help you manage your bills. I can be your power of attorney for your healthcare decisions as well as your financial. I can help you by paying your bills or set it up for auto pay so that you don't have a problem, which, by the way, when they pass away, please make sure you turn those off. So, the simple things like on here, the mortgage, the rent, the lease, insurance, taxes, maintenance fees, all of that has to be maintained whether they're sick or not. So if you can't be there, which a lot of us can't, we're long distance caregivers, we're secondary caregivers, then you might want to look at hiring a money manager or hiring, accountants have some bookkeeping firms, things like that. Someone to just come in and write the check, someone to check the donations to charity, because I don't know about you, but once you give money, the letters never stop coming, and they just pile up and pile up. And I collected them once to see what it was, and there was like 14 within 2 months, 14 different mailings from the World Wildlife Foundation. And I sent all of them back to them. And I said, you'll never get another dime from my parents because you are wasting your time sending all of this. So you need to know what's going on, because people who are kind of losing their memory will keep paying it. Oh, I didn't pay this already. I didn't already do this. And so unless they're really good record keepers, you want to have somebody keep an eye on those kinds of things to make sure you're not being scammed.
And it comes back to that durable power of attorney as well. It's kind of the key document that's going to get you into a lot of different access to a lot of information.
Well, the durable power of attorney allows you to have access and control for specifically medical things in addition to the regular financial things. If you only do a power of attorney, then that person does not have the right to say no to a medical procedure or any of that, and they only have the financial stuff. So just make sure you have the right kind of power of attorney and the right kind of healthcare proxy system when you're looking at the situation before you just assume you have it all correct.
So we talked about legal documents, we talked about medical documents. Just the handout, there's handouts for the checklist of those as well. Those two handouts are available on the meeting control panel. Now here's just some other like data, just kind of a laundry list of other day-to-day things that are good to collect. So Fern, I'll let you go through this.
Yeah, so I don't want to go through all of them. Obviously, there's a lot of them, but the first on the left side is vital documents. These are things we talked a little bit about earlier, but there are things like citizenship papers, name changes, military discharge papers. You think, why would I need that? But I will tell you, you need it if you want a veteran's funeral in a veteran's cemetery. You need your military discharge papers. You need proof of that to get veteran care. You need, if you have name changes, from marriage or whatever reason your name was changed. All of these things are important, from your first Social Security card to your current one, to have everything track. So those kinds of papers, and we're still, when there's a generation of a lot of people that came over as immigrants and things had changed. So make sure you have all of that. And then on the other side are all the contracts, which we kind of talked about, but make sure you have things like the deed to any properties, especially if there's rental properties or there might be timeshare kind of things. Make sure you have deeds to all of that, because at some point you might need to sell them or refinance them to get money to pay for care. So have all of those things. And then maintenance programs, people forget about that, but we often, I had, for example, 3 times a year, the HVAC people would come and do service to the air conditioner. And that's a contract that was on auto pay and just never stopped. So you have to look at all of those things and make sure you want to keep continuing, because certainly if somebody moves out of a home, you want to stop paying for it.
Yep. And again, just more stuff, more laundry list of things to consider here. We talked about some of them, utilities, the timeshares.
You'll get this in the handout. So this is just a bunch more of things to look for. And you don't realize how much you're processing as a homeowner or even as a renter or just living in this world. So in order to take over care, these are the things you need to know.
Right. So it's a lot to take on, obviously, with there's a number of things we talked about that need to get done. So, we're big advocates of creating a team, and that team's gonna require, some people on the professional side, most likely. Could be, we talked about financial professionals, whether it's a financial advisor, an accountant. On the medical side, doctors, nurses, aides, knowing who those people are, right, Fern? That's sort of the purpose here, knowing who those people are. On the legal side, the attorneys that draft those powers of attorneys, that draft the wills, that draft the trust, that's typically done by an estate attorney. You mentioned early on when we were talking about Medicaid, elder care and elder law attorneys. So I don't know, Fern, we want to just take a minute to kind of explain a little bit maybe what the difference is between where an elder care attorney can be helpful?
Yeah, so an estate attorney is going to take care of all those paperwork things you just talked about, the things you expect. There's a package that they offer, they talk at libraries, they do all of this stuff all the time. So that's... And
that package you're referring to, Fern, is typically a will, it's the powers of attorney, it's the medical directives.
Yes.
That's the package that estate planning attorneys will create, typically for a flat fee, because it's just, it all comes together.
Right.
Sorry.
But elder law will prepare your family for things like I talked about, basically a financial divorce in the case of one person getting Medicaid, so the other person won't have no assets to live on, no resources to live on. But also elder law can get involved with mediation if there are family conflicts, if somebody, unfortunately, I hear too much about this, where family is trying to steal. There was, taking money illegally. They're saying they're helping, but they're using it to steal, or they want to take over the property, or they're cutting somebody out or whatever. So your elder law firm will be able to handle those kinds of things and do or recommend you to a mediator. I do family moderation and mediation for conversations that the elder lawyers attorneys tell me people need to talk about this before they get in our office. Otherwise, they're paying us to listen to their family squabble,
Right. So that's where I see it. I swear it's where I see elder care, elder law attorneys becoming, it's one, if there's Medicaid is on the table at all, and you're trying to figure out if Medicaid's something that you qualify for. Again, Medicaid, that poverty level, kind of spend down, if limited assets. So to help qualify for Medicaid or to see if you're eligible for Medicaid, that's where an elder law attorney can be helpful, and then resolving conflicts. And then we mentioned the real estate attorney too, and that's just an issue. If there's real estate, it's part of the net worth, the balance sheet. You may need a real estate attorney to talk about how to transfer those properties efficiently.
or
Usually,
sell them.
Or sell them, correct. So that's the professional team, and now I think there's other things to think about too. And I don't know, Fern, I'll let you kind of run through this. Maybe tell us, if you have any anecdotes to add here.
Yeah, the whole idea of having a team is so that you don't have to do it all by yourself. The one thing that is overwhelming is when you think, oh my God, I have to do this, da, 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 and let's say you're at work, right? And you get a phone call from the landlord or the neighbor saying there's water coming out of your parents' place, and you're like, oh my God, and you're about to head into a meeting that's going to make $1 billion for your business, and you're thinking, how am I supposed to do this? So your household team is about collecting the information that you might need in an emergency, and you don't think about it until you're in it. But when you're in it, do you really want to start calling a plumber who knows how to get access or has worked in the house before, or an electrician or a handyman? I mean, if mom's cabinet door falls over or the drawer gets stuck, do you really want to be the one that has to go there? So if you have these this particular list and many others, then you are able to say, okay, no problem, I got this covered.
Yeah, and that's the reality of it, isn't it, Fern? That a lot of caregivers are in their prime years of their career, and maybe have families of their own, children that they're taking care of.
Absolutely.
So, time is very valuable and a very scarce resource. That's
right. And so in this support team that I put together, it includes things like who's taking care of the animals in the house, who's taking care of the plants that your dad loves, what doctors are on the list that need to be called if a tooth falls out or gets cracked or whatever. Like, you need the dentist, and medical supplies. I'm sending them home, they need a hospital bed, or they need a wheelchair, or they need we'll give them the crutches, but then they need blah blah blah. So all of these things, you're like, oh my God, do I really have to do this? And that's where you can have someone else say, okay, here's the list, and let me do this with you. Or you can do it over time, because while they're healthy, you can still do this as long as you know where they're going to live.
Absolutely. Yeah, so just kind of transitioning now to kind of wrap things up. We talked about having a conversation, kind of where we left off the last webinar. We kind of picked that up again here at the beginning, because again, conversations and getting everybody on the same page is what starts this entire process. Once you get the agreement to start planning, collecting the data. So you've got a list, you got a checklist of data that are reminders of things you need to gather ahead of time that will make your life easier once things go wrong. and then storing that data. Again, we didn't talk about this, if you have family that's going to be coordinating and they're all across the country, across the world, making use of, Google Drive, Dropbox, or whatever storage, cloud storage facilities, scanning all the documents so everybody has access to them when they need them. A lot of this, and Fern, very passionate about this, is helping the caregiver maintain their sanity throughout this process. Sanity is extreme, and sanity, again, sanity is a kind of a, can make light of it, but at the very, just being able to manage emotions going through this and everything is very important for the caregiver. So being able to prepare up front is what we're trying to convey through this series of webinars. We're trying to help provoke conversations and give you actionable items to prepare ahead of time.
Yeah, we put the Dropbox image in there because when my mom was a hoarder, basically, she collected everything from every family member that ever passed away, and then I had to go through it all. And I know that a lot of you are saying, I don't want my father's junk, their collectibles, I don't need that stuff. So what I did was I used Dropbox to take photos of everything that I found, and I sent links to my sister and brother and their kids, and I said, tell me what you want me to save, because everything else is going either to auction or to donate or to sale. So that's what we did. So you can make use of the tech that's out there to so you don't have to run, you don't have to tell your family, they all have to come in and look at everything in the house and take the things. And you can have conversations, if you have pictures of everything, with your loved ones before they pass, and say, who would you like to have this? And then put names on it so that you have a record that all the people you want to share that can have.
Right. And I'll just mention again, if Fern, whether it's a third party, having a third party help, look, if it's going to take a lot of time to work with mom and dad to get all this stuff together, having a third party or a service like you offer and you're offering to our clients, Fern, which is to maybe you help work with mom and dad to get everything in place. That takes the burden off of the caregivers so that they can, again, focus their time and energy on those things that, are happening in their lives, their children, their careers, and still take care of mom and dad with some assistance.
Yeah, perfect.
So, in the vein of preparing before you need things, our next webinar is going to be on talking about, the different the different areas where you can receive care. So there's going to be decisions to make about where, when, and how your loved one's going to receive care. So gathering that information we talked about today is going to help you put in place, one, your authority to act on their behalf through the legal documents. It's going to help you identify the financial resources that might be available to help pay for care. So once you have all that, we want to spend our next webinar, which is going to be in April 4th. We're going to work with you on talking about where those different care facilities are, the difference between them, just so you understand going in, what the different options are. Maybe you can have conversations with your loved one about where they would like to receive care ideally. And then you can marry that up with finances to see, when the time comes and they need to receive care, now where they want to be, is that something that they can afford, or is that going to require outside financial assistance from the family as well? So that's going to be what we're going to tackle in our next webinar. As I mentioned, it's going to be Thursday, April 4th at 11:30, the same time. And we're going to navigate all the care options at that time.
We'll also talk about, sorry to interrupt, Chris.
No.
We'll also talk about if your loved one refuses to leave and wants to stay at home, what are the options for in-home care? So it's not just about where you have to put them or take them or send them. It's also about, what are my options for bringing them into my house? What are the options for keeping them at home, and those kinds of things. So we'll try to cover everything. And if you have any specific things you want us to cover, please let Chris know or Sophia know before the seminar, and then we'll make sure we include that.
Perfect. That's great point. So that wraps up what we had planned to talk about today. So if you have any questions, now would be the time. Again, you can use that control panel, type any questions into the questions box. I haven't seen any questions pop in while we've been talking here. Before we break, just, on the slide here, you see our contact information. You can follow 40W Advisors, our socials. We publish a lot of articles, financial related, mostly, some related to this there. And then you'll have, Fern's website, Fern's contact information there as well. So again, thank you everyone for your time. Hope you found it to be time well spent. Hope you got something out of it. Don't hesitate to reach out to us with any questions. And you'll receive in the follow-up, you'll receive a link to register for the next webinar. So
hope to see you there, guys.
all right. Thank you, everybody. Take care.